It's wild to me that this game is actually loaded into my computer and I played it. For those who are unaware, this game has been in the back of character action game fans' minds since 2016. The creator of this project, Yang Bing, uploaded a trailer for his solo dev project in May of that year, and let's just say it garnered some attention. Just a little bit. An action game that looked to be giving Devil May Cry a run for its money with how many hits this guy was dishing out to the enemies he just launched. All with a visual style inspired by the contemporary look of Final Fantasy 15.
Yang Bing really saw Final Fantasy Versus 13 and said, if they won't do it, I will. But among the bajillions of other eyes on the project was also PlayStation themselves. This was all possible through PlayStation's China Hero Project, an initiative that helps China-based developers with anything from development to marketing to publishing, and with the success of that trailer, how could they not, you know? Sony would approach Mr. Bing with an offer to help guide him get a studio off the ground to help release Lost Soul Aside globally. Not gonna lie, about a month before release, some trailers started dropping depicting the game, and I was getting worried.
It still looked incredible, don't get me wrong, but something about the combat in particular was different. It was still fast and full of combos, but it was seemingly less focused on aerial juggles and long strings of attacks. I know the game essentially restarted sometime after Sony stepped in with their bank pen, so it's totally possible that Mr. Bing altered his vision slightly after that first version. We'll definitely dive in a bit more on that topic later. It's almost certainly not a big deal though. I'm just excited that I actually got my hands on this thing. Lost Soul Aside was one of my personal white whales, a Final Fantasy VII remake sort of situation, something I didn't know if I would ever actually get to play. I mean, it's been a little over a decade since I first put my eyes on this project, and now that I have the deluxe edition for $70, I'm ready to dig in. Do be wary of story and gameplay spoilers in this video. I will be putting it all under my microscope today. I also need to mention that a lot of my footage is more choppy than the game actually looked while playing. I really apologize for that, but I also don't know if that's my fault or the game's fault. I recorded footage for other games after recording my Lost Soul Aside playthrough, and none of it looked this inconsistent. But if you're not scared of those nasty spoilers or frame drops, let's get started. This is Lost Soul Aside. This is Kaiser. He's part of a resistance group fighting back against the Empire. The Empire is mean, and especially hate children. This is his sister Louisa. She sure does love her big brother. The resistance group launches an attack against the Empire. They shot some fireworks during a parade. That'll really piss him off, but not as much as an alien invasion dropping from the sky. Kaiser goes underneath the city and finds a being from another dimension that's been held in captivity for a long time named Arena. They fuse somehow, and now Kaiser can fight super goodly. Louisa gets her soul stolen by an alien. Kaiser is upset. Arena and Kaiser go on a journey to get Louisa's soul back and find out why the aliens are invading. Eventually they do that. This story is boring as f. Let me make this clear. At no point during the build-up to this game was I thinking, oh man, I wonder what kind of narrative Lost Soul Aside will have. Because from Jump Street, the combat and visuals were at the forefront. I would have given a passable story a comb-over, but after about 2 or 3 hours of long-forgotten history by bygone civilizations, reminiscing on past battles, I checked out so hard. After you get let loose in the first real level, you go through and have to smack some sense into these great warriors who have been corrupted by the aliens. Arena and Kaiser tell each of them the same exact spiel about how the aliens, the Voidrax, have come back and are making lame and stuff.
He controlled your mind using corrupted Voidrax energy.
Your energy and power were corrupted. You had no control.
You were out of control, White Cloud, driven by the corrupted power of Aramon.
And then the same thing happens for the other levels too.
You were cleansed of the energy that was corrupting you.
My master and peers have all been corrupted.
Are we going to have to say the same thing to every single one of these people?
We do break from this formula towards the back of the game when we get to one of the other characters' homelands, but the scenario never becomes any more interesting. We dedicate so much time to going to these locations, and I can't help but feel like it's just bloat. No shade to anyone who got something from the story, but I don't see whatever you saw. The Final Fantasy parallels are so clear. If it's not the obvious ones like Kaiser being a dead ringer for Noctis from 15, then it's the presence of an evil empire that the heroes are fighting against. It's the fascination with crystals. It's the way NPC dialogue is displayed when in towns being exactly like 7 Remake. The first section of this game mimics the bombing mission of 7 Remake. They might have the staples of the story, but they completely missed making the characters likable and have relatable personalities. Instead, they're all forgettable. Kaiser is the one-dimensional hero who asks more questions than Solid f***ing Snake, I swear to God.
Mistwood, a portal, the Life Nexus, Reincarnate, an aggregation of cycles, Neverwind Monastery, Final Goodbyes.
Arena is the one-dimensional guide character that has a secret past that gets explained as we go. The running joke where people call him Fish is cute, but having to hear his repeated voice clips in and out of battle got annoying by the 2-hour mark.
Here it comes again. Dodge! It's gone berserk again. Let's wait for another opening. Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
And the rest of the people we interact with are even less interesting than that. Kaiser's sister? Who gives a shit? This old lady that Arena has a history with, and I guess there's supposed to be an implied romantic thing, maybe? Couldn't be bothered. Her daughter, who saves your game and gives you access to the shop? You annoy me. The history girl who gives you exposition on the world and all these other over-explained characters? They try so hard to make you care about her, especially because there's an implied thing between her and Kaiser.
Are you alright?
Yes, thanks. You make a pretty good cushion, Kaiser.
Good to know.
Oh my goodness, how adorable. Maybe they love each other.
I feel bad, but they keep trying to make me care about these characters, but I don't.
How are you holding up, Gethia?
I don't care how Gethia is doing, I just want to smack stuff around. And I don't want to come across as uninterested in stories at all, because that's totally not me. I can enjoy a good story, but it has to be good, you know? Something that captivates me and complements the gameplay. Lost Soul Aside's story doesn't contribute, it actively gets in the way of my enjoyment. It walks that line between being so bad it's entertaining for the wrong reasons and genuinely great storytelling, but just ends up falling into boring territory. It's not bad, it's just boring. And I'm very thankful that we can skip cutscenes. But when it all takes me away from the combat to inquire about information that I don't care about, it starts to turn from a passive disinterest into an actual nuisance. Combat is what you come to Lost Soul Aside for, without question. And it is good. It's better than most. But it has a few crucial flaws in different areas that could have made it better than just good. Kaiser has some basic movement skills. He can jump, double jump, and eventually air dash, all with the jump button. By pressing L1, Kaiser can dodge in any direction, even using it to cancel out attacks or recovery animations. By pressing circle, this blue ring will flash around Kaiser, allowing him to block all incoming damage for a brief moment. Most importantly, however, Kaiser will acquire 4 unique weapons throughout the course of the adventure, each adding a great deal of utility to his moveset. Every weapon will have its basic combo on square and its special combo on triangle. As you defeat enemies, you'll gain ability points that can unlock new moves for each weapon. In terms of special attacks, the sword will send a volley of projectiles a short distance to hit enemies. The greatsword will slam the ground and not really do a whole lot, honestly. If you hit triangle and then square quickly after, Kaiser will spin the greatsword and hit with a counterattack where he is completely invulnerable. It's kinda crazy how long this invincibility period lasts. The polearm's basic combo on square will build up a resource that can be spent on the triangle button, firing rapid projectiles if you tap the button. But holding the input will show a reticle and allow you to aim a more powerful shot manually. And finally, the scythe stance really opens up combat by introducing a grapple ability. Tapping triangle will send out a scythe to the targeted enemy, but then pressing square will immediately pull the enemy to Kaiser. This move in specific really opened up the casual floor for combos to me. But beyond that, as you can see, the stances pretty much share the same inputs. Chaining the basic combo for any of your weapons will lead Kaiser to performing a string of basic attacks. But after unlocking different skills in each weapon's tree, more opportunities to break free and splice in triangle inputs become available. Thankfully, juggling enemies in the air is still a very large focus for this combat system. The sword, the polearm, and the scythe all have very easy ways to launch enemies by pressing triangle after any of the first 3 square inputs. This will launch Kaiser into the air with the enemy he's targeting. The greatsword is more grounded in that sense. It has far fewer methods of launching enemies due to its triangle input simply giving another grounded combo. More attacks can be accessed by holding each input too. If the greatsword holds triangle, it'll charge the damage, but if you then hit the jump button shortly afterwards, Kaiser will slash upwards, which does give the greatsword a path to launch. It's not as graceful as the other methods if you ask me, but it's an option and I like that. By holding square, the polearm will spin and constantly damage enemies while draining his stamina, but you can keep it going as long as you have the stamina to spare. It even works in the air. Yeah, this aerial juggle has been going on for about a minute. Why yes, I am an expert. Why do you ask, kitten? Charging the sword was one of my favorite attack paths in the game, but if you can then time a held triangle press, he'll spring into this fast attack that covers a large area, and to top it off, you can hit the right trigger after this to activate this phantom attack. After certain attacks and during sections of certain combos, Kaiser will glow blue. By pressing the right trigger, some sort of attack will either hit the enemy or travel from Kaiser to the enemy. These phantom strikes do cost stamina, but I think the stamina system is a little strange. The phantom strikes share this gauge with the dodge and block. Both the block and the dodge cost 1 pip of stamina, but the thing is, the stamina gauge refills very quickly, so I understand why it's attached to the dodge and block. They're both fairly generous as far as their active frames go, especially the dodge. Thus, it makes sense to stop players from spamming this up until the moment they're ready to attack to stay completely safe. But again, it refills at a good rate, so if you're using them only when you need to, you'll never really run out. It just feels weird that they would also tie a part of your offensive toolkit to this too. The phantom strikes never felt like the difference between victory and a loss to me, and I never noticed the stamina bar draining a great deal after using them. Again, it's just interesting that they tied these two things together. I was never in a situation where it put me out during a time when I would have needed to avoid damage. Kaiser will also slowly gain access to arena ability. These are singular attacks that go on a lengthy cooldown after use. Eventually, you can have 3 equipped at a time, and they can be pretty useful. I really liked Shifting Earth, a huge rocky attack that deals some decent damage. There's also one that creates a tree that slowly drains the life of enemies while slowly refilling Kaisers. There are lots of attacks, and I don't really feel like going over all of them, but there are surely plenty that will fit into any kind of combo that you can come up with. The wind-up animation these all share is a bit lengthy. I couldn't see these being anything besides moves that you would use when you have an opening. I wouldn't exactly call myself a combo master though, so I would love to be proven wrong on that. When an enemy has had their stamina completely depleted, they will stagger and be helpless until it refills. In this time, especially if it's a larger boss enemy, you can freely attack and then even juggle enemies that wouldn't allow that before. But during this window, at some point, it's important that you activate the sync attack to rack up extra damage. This is a long, automated combo that will keep the enemy staggered while it smacks them around. This can be activated right at the very end of the stagger's time limit, so it's in your best interest to activate it right as it's about to restore to maximize the damage. And enemies won't regain their stagger until they touch the ground, making it feel genuinely great to keep the enemies vulnerable longer than they should be.
Not strong enough.
You can also activate Kaiser and Arena's fusion mode to increase the damage further. It's a basic double trigger or rage mode, nothing that's worth any extra explanation. The combat had some subtle notes of Final Fantasy XVI the more I started to realize. The stagger meter doesn't multiply my damage, no, but it still feels like a race to unload on that staggered enemy after the timer starts. I do always feel a little cucked when I unleash a sync attack at the end of one of the boss's health bars, but all those hits go to waste because the boss is going into a phase change where they take no damage. It's a nitpick, but it's one of those things that I don't really like. Arena abilities feel similar to the icon abilities, except with less utility because of the wind-up and the cooldown that obviously want you to only use them once per battle. And then the little action notifications you get in the bottom right when you pull something off, just like in 16. These aren't bad things, but they just help to paint a picture of the game's influences. But again, combat is really good, and again, I've never been a combo smith, but I can see that this game has the ability for some awesome combos to be created. The sword and polearm are wonderful in racking up hits with lots of flashy skills that you can string together in unique ways if you get creative. The greatsword becomes more of a combo extender and means of damage. It gained a lot more use to ping-pong enemies around after I unlocked the scythe. I also found out that if you tap the dodge button alone in mid-air, Kaiser will shoot back down to the ground to potentially catch an enemy as they fall from a launch. I can't tell you how much more I was enjoying the combat after I was able to juggle enemies in the air for a bit with the polearm and sword, smack them away with the greatsword, and then pull them back with the scythe to continue the pain in the air. If what you you look for in an action game is the ability to style on enemies and express yourself by styling on them, you'll eventually have a great time with Lost Soul aside. And I use the word eventually there very intentionally. On to my gripes with combat. I don't think it opens up fast enough. I felt like we're given too much time between weapon unlocks. The short sword and the great sword in particular are the only weapons you have for a little too long. Around the 3-hour mark, you get access to the great sword, and then another 5 hours of playtime, give or take, you're given access to the polearm. In that gap between the great sword and the polearm, I was able to almost max out both the sword and the great sword. It's cool that I can unlock all their moves, but I was getting bored with their attacks. And again, I didn't like how limited the great sword was in comboing up with the sword. It wasn't painful or anything only playing with the great sword and the sword, but I became very familiar with their attacks. I never really saw the routes for the two to meaningfully connect on their own. I wanted more to play with, and the repetitious story wasn't helping relieve any feeling of monotony either.
After over 1,000 years, this is the first time I've seen the Rose Queen so excited.
Plus, this was also around the time when Kaiser would start pulling off some really sick moves in the cutscenes, using Arena as wings and tendrils to move around or even attack enemies, and I was feeling a little left out. Like, damn, I want to do that. I don't mean to make it seem like there were no sick combos that can be pulled off before the Scythe's arrival, but I really think it helps the flow of combat exponentially. I've never been the kind of guy to lab these combos. I don't think I have the time, but mostly the desire to commit in that way. I love experimenting, and if I can pull something off, that's great, but tools like the Scythe, similar to Nero's grab in DMC 4 and 5, keep the combo going without having to internalize the distance you need to dash or to catch an enemy with another attack. It's a great ability that I would have loved to get access to earlier in the adventure. In my perfect world, the polearm and the Scythe would change their placements in the campaign. Or maybe just give Kaiser another ability to supplement, like a teleport ability that will warp him to the enemies like Trickster or Clive's Ifrit Dash. God knows they could have used some variety since all of them are just Kaiser punches the ground and then something happens. I think more could have been taken from 16, like icon abilities that can be activated in the air to do different things. We have a decent customization system that allows you to slightly increase the stats of a weapon or equip one that can accumulate an element on an enemy. It's cool that each of these accessories can be flipped, skewed, scaled up and down, and will actually be represented on the model for each individual weapon. It reminded me of other weapon customization systems I love, something like customizing Call of Duty skins in Black Ops. I appreciate the options have here, but it's a little bare bones. Giving some of the accessories color palettes to swap to or even the freedom to recolor them ourselves would be really nice. But even if you just leave it hanging in the air next to the weapon, it's fun to place these trinkets for some personal flair. But after a while, you realize how much of a difference these boosts actually make, which isn't much at all. So I ended up just hiding the accessories to get a move on. Same thing when you eventually unlock the elemental versions of these weapons. They're supposed to add certain battle effects as the status builds, but I never noticed anything besides the fire one, and again, it wasn't noticeable enough to build a playstyle around. I would have appreciated some arena powers that lean towards an element so the status effects can actually be interacted with. But please don't let Arena comment on it. I'm sick of hearing him ask me if I'm enjoying his power.
How do you feel about Lord Arena's power, huh?
Ugh, no.
The weapon customization system feels like a weird attempt to shove RPG mechanics into a game that I didn't expect to have any. Not to say that they don't deserve to be there, but I feel like the skill tree and the arena abilities do a fine enough job as it is. At their worst, the trinkets are totally harmless, but I feel like I wouldn't miss them if they weren't there.
Enemies for the most part are great. It's very easy to tell which ones are going to be your punching bags and which enemies need to be approached with a bit more caution. I think the fodder and the mini-boss enemies are awesome. There's a great variety here with lots of fun movesets and enemy types to keep an eye on. There are damage indicators aplenty. Enemies that are about to charge at you will have an area of effect stretch across the ground, which is very welcome. Even the basic enemies have regular attacks, projectiles, and even these blue attacks that will push enemies back if you can time a block perfectly. None of them give me issues, and a few of them even have interesting means of dispatching though. These worms can be immediately taken out by blocking their projectile at the right time. For most of the enemies, there are no problems. Their attacks are telegraphed really well, and it's very clear when you have to either dodge or press the block button. But there are also some issues that make boss fights in particular a challenge that doesn't feel entirely fair. Combat systems heavily rely on sound cues to give the player ample information on how to deal with attacks. Expedition 33 was a masterclass in sound design that would dramatically build up to a point with the visuals, leading to very clear yet strict timings for parries. Similar to Expedition 33, parrying the blue moves in Lost Soul Aside is preferable over dodging them because it'll knock off a chunk of the enemy's stagger meter. Pretty important shit, right? Now, I want you to watch and listen to this blue attack from a boss.
Let's get serious.
Did you pick up on where you were supposed to hit the block button? Yeah, you didn't, because there was no sound at all. A lot of these boss attacks are audibly unclear, and at their worst, a visual nightmare. Yes, it's very visually stimulating, it's an awesome spectacle, but it's a lot of visual noise that leaves me with next to no confidence on when I should hit the button. I look back on some of the older footage that we were treated to, like the showcase from 2017. You can see that a lot of the same moves from the sword and the polearm survived from then until now, but the VFX seems a lot more reserved. Personally, I prefer how much more readable this is. It's mostly preference, but my preference is the less exaggerated particle effects everywhere. Overall, a lot of the boss fights are great. The attacks are a little tough to catch, which does leave room for practice, I guess. But for a lot of these guys, they end up having incredibly flashy, all-encompassing attacks that have really unclear hitboxes. It leaves me too unsure on when I need to dodge, when I should hit that block button, all the things that should be crystal clear in a good action game. I wouldn't go so far as to call any of these bosses bad. They're perfectly playable, but the over-the-top visual effects seem to drag the clarity on the battlefield way down. I think one of my favorite examples of a boss is this water guy. He looks incredible while also being able to clearly see when I need to block his attacks. I enjoy the variety of bosses we get, but I think this guy has a great balance of flash and actual playability. There is a big issue with pacing though. In the beginning of the game, battles come at a decent pace. You're still learning how the game works, so the fights feel like opportunities to learn and figure out Kaiser's expanding move list. After a while, as I mentioned, you unlock all of those abilities. And once you find your groove, combat starts becoming a chore. Towards the end of the game, I could feel things heading to their end. I'm mentally preparing for what the final battle's gonna be like. But as I go through these levels, I see a large open area, and in my head, I'm dreading what will happen when... No, a combat encounter with the same enemies I've been fighting for the past 11 hours with the same moves and combos? Get it away from me. Oh, we're at the final moments of the game and we're about to step through this portal and go beat the bad guy. Well, that means the annoying side character should challenge me to a unique boss fight to break all of the tension.
Can you prove you really are worthy of her sacrifice? She is my world. My everything!
This is the first time in my life that I've been provoked to hit a woman.
Yes, the fight is one of the better ones in the game in my opinion, but this was all past the point when I was ready for the adventure to be over. The boss fights in general do a great job of breaking the monotony up, but it's the overbearing quantity of those basic enemy encounters that outstay their welcome. The game does try to break this up with puzzles and platforming challenges, but these aren't of the best quality. I can take or leave the game's attempt at puzzles, but I did not anticipate the amount of platforming segments they throw at you here. They aren't bad, but Kaiser isn't really built for this. The grappling hook that the scythe form has is so awkward. The camera has to be facing the anchor point, and Kaiser can't be performing another attack otherwise that'll eat the input. You also can't have any of the other 3 weapons equipped if you want to grapple, even though it's a context-sensitive action that can't be performed anywhere else besides when these things are around. Keeping him in the sprinting state, which gives you the longest jump, isn't intuitive. I tried to use the greatsword skateboard thingy to get around, but Kaiser can't jump while in this state, and if you want to take him over a ledge to maybe have a little fun and get some airtime, yeah, he drops like a f***ing rock. I'm always just wondering why we're wasting our time with this. There's the occasional moment where the platforming is interesting, but even then, I don't quite understand why we're trying to be Mario Galaxy right now. There were a lot of moments where the game was taking me down these detours and I just wanted to get back on track. I think the game could have been trimmed down in a few major places to keep replay value higher. But I know some people like their longer games, so maybe that's just me. On the visual front, I think this game looks great. Battles are fast and flashy. To reiterate that again, the action looks so good when it's in motion. I can't deny that, but I still think it's overdone in a lot of instances. The locations that we're treated to are solid. The variety is really commendable, even if it does leave the adventure feeling really disconnected. You change biomes a little too fast and frequently for my liking. It makes some sense within the story, I guess, but going from abandoned ruins to futuristic sci-fi land to ancient Chinese temples back to super sci-fi land, then a snowy mountaintop, yeah, these locations look really good as far as their visual fidelity, but it also has no real cohesion and no unique identity that screams, this is Lost Soul Aside. I've seen a variation of these locations before in other games using Unreal Engine, so that's double on the unoriginality front. The realistic art style looks good, and you'll never hear me say this game isn't visually stunning in a lot of ways, but in the time since since this game was revealed to now, Unreal has become a fantastic tool to help smaller devs create incredibly detailed worlds that look an awful lot like this game. We're not at a loss for any of the environments that are shown in Lost Soul Aside. We are at a loss as far as performance goes, however. This is one aspect that really breaks my heart. I should be able to run on high settings with DLSS in performance mode, but I've had stutters, frame rate drops, and straight up slideshows at some points. It's bad, guys. It's really bad. I have no idea how much better or worse the PS5 version is, but I would probably recommend playing on that if given the chance. They are aware of the issues, so that's good, but it's unacceptable at this point. I would love to be able to sing the praises of the visuals, but I can't without a boss fight turning into a slideshow, or exploration dropping below 60 FPS altogether. When I look back at the previews and videos that were shown in the lead up to Lost Soul Aside's release, I don't get upset, but I do start asking questions. It's obvious that the videos do look better than the game we were given, but I would also be willing to bet that this is all proof of concept. This was never a real game, simply a capsule to show a publisher or give Yongbing's eventual team for direction. The combat is real, that looked to be set in stone pretty early on. Through these videos, you can see where the shift in focus is though. Peep the combo counter in the corner. While it's very possible that this was just for demo purposes to accentuate how flashy combat can be, I think this brings a precedent. A precedent that doesn't exactly align with the RPG systems and stats to increase. Not the end of the world, but a change in the direction of what the game was shaping into. But I return to how much of the story wasn't shown. I look at the open world concepts that were originally planned and then scrapped due to Yongbing's shrinking time limit, and I feel bad for the guy. I see the story and the copious amounts of dialogue in the final game and can't help but see that as Sony pushing something that wasn't strictly action into the game so it'd fit nicely into their portfolio. Something that wouldn't be out of place next to God of War, Spider-Man, or Final Fantasy. Now don't mishear me, Big Brother Sony is not the reason this game fell short of our expectations, not even close. It was a mix of Sony wanting the game to be bigger than it had any right to be, Yongbing's inexperience in a leadership role, and the fact that this game has obviously gone through hell and back on its development journey. You don't stay in active development for over a decade making something with level design this linear and bland. There's a great article that I'll link in the description that goes far more in depth on the game's timeline, but long story short, Lost Soul Aside hit a number of roadblocks from 2017 to 2019. They gained a lot of staff to help the project along, but eventually had to scrap the entire thing in 2020. For the next 5 years, the game was on a fraction of the original budget, and what historical event happened in 2020 that impacted a lot of game development? That shticky, icky COVID hit, which created another lull in productivity. Eventually, we got the game we got, and I genuinely think Yongbing did his best with what he had at his disposal. He was just a green as grass creative that wanted to make the game he saw in his head. I think he learned enough for a lifetime over the course of this project, but he made the damn thing, and whether or not that's enough is up to you to decide. Do I regret spending the money on the deluxe edition? Personally, yeah, I do. The price tag has become contentious among us early adopters. I can't tell you how big $70 is, but for me, it's a decent chunk. For the content that we got and the quality it's sitting at, I think it should have been closer to $50 for the standard edition and $60 for the deluxe. I didn't love the game like I was hoping to, and it really breaks my heart that that's the case. It sucks, man. I really wanted more for this game. I didn't expect the story to be good, but I didn't expect it to be as uninteresting as it was. And the voice acting? Dude, it is not good.
Don't worry. We, Glimmer, will protect the harbor residents.
Technical performance is a joke at this point on low to mid-range PCs from what I gather. Combat is the saving grace, with plenty of player expression that will keep DMC fans like myself distracted from the other pitfalls of the game. The pace at which those combat abilities are handed to you makes that crawl a little too slow though. An accessory and weapon customization system that feels tacked on with no real impact on the combat sandbox, and level design that only serves to push you to the next combat arena with nothing else. I can't imagine a sequel to Lost Soul Aside is in serious talks after the bumpy launch, but I would be more than happy to see where we can go if given another chance to begin again. Maybe a reboot of Lost Soul Aside, or just another IP altogether. One way or another, I just hope that Yongbing can find some sort of opportunity wherever he lands. He put everything he had into this project, and it might not have worked out, but I think he still kicks ass. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about one of my most anticipated games of this year. If you liked my particular brand of talking into a microphone and showing pretty pictures on the screen, then I would be eternally grateful if you liked this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to go a step further, you can head down to the description and find links to our community Discord server and my Patreon. If you join over there, you'll gain access to perks like uncensored and ad-free versions of my videos, as well as exclusive videos. I just reviewed Split Fiction with my best friend, and that video is available for $5 and up patrons. $5 patrons such as Squirrel,
Thanks so much, my man. And I would also like to thank my $10 patrons, White Ghost 117 and Nikki Coon 99. All the love in the world to my fellas. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching. So thanks for stopping by and have a great day.